Have you ever felt that your fears control your life? That moment when anxiety paralyzes your body, when doubts invade your mind and prevent you from moving forward? How many opportunities have you missed because of fear of failure, rejection, or the unknown? Today I want to share with you a transformative principle that the great psychologist Carl Jung discovered after decades of studying the human psyche. The connection between choosing yourself and deactivating your deepest fears. Before continuing, ask yourself, are you living the life you truly want? Not the one your parents, partner, or society expects from you. Not the one that seems right to others, but the one that truly resonates with your soul. This seemingly simple question is the starting point of a spiritual transformation that can completely change your existence. Jung understood that there is a direct relationship between our fears and the disconnection from our true self. He called it the individuation process, that journey toward becoming who we truly are. When we avoid this path, when we deny our authenticity, we create the perfect ground for fears to flourish and dominate us. The modern world is designed to keep you distracted, trapped in routines, expectations, and commitments that seem inevitable. Think about it. Every notification on your phone, every new social trend, every opinion about how you should live your life, everything is designed to take you away from that internal silence where you could hear your own voice. And here's the truth that few dare to face. Every time you choose to please others above your inner truth, you're feeding your deepest fears. Jung discovered that our connection with the unconscious is not optional. It's an essential part of who we are. Your unconscious is constantly sending you signals through dreams, intuitions, bodily sensations, trying to guide you toward a more authentic life. But we often ignore these signals because facing them can be uncomfortable. That feeling of discomfort you feel when something isn't right in your life is no coincidence. It's your soul speaking to you, showing you that there's something you need to change, even though you fear doing it. Now pause for a moment and reflect on the important decisions you've made in recent years. How many of them truly came from a place of authenticity? And how many were driven by fear, by the need to meet others' expectations, or simply by not wanting to cause discomfort? Jung invited us to examine this because he discovered that decisions that don't come from your inner truth only create more chaos, more disconnection, and consequently, more fears in your life. The fascinating thing about Jung's spiritual principle is that when you begin to choose yourself, something extraordinary happens with your fears. They start to lose their power over you. They don't magically disappear. That would be naive to think. But they no longer paralyze you. They no longer dictate your decisions. They are no longer the center of your universe. This is the most powerful spiritual principle Jung left us. Authenticity as an antidote to fear. Choosing yourself doesn't mean rejecting others or living in a state of selfishness. Jung was very clear about this. It's not about avoiding responsibilities or always doing whatever you want. It's about recognizing that to give your best, to serve others from a genuine place, you first need to be at peace with yourself. This is the foundation of true self-love, a concept that Jung explored deeply in his work. Self-love is not vanity or narcissism. It's the basis from which all meaningful and authentic relationships can flourish. When you prioritize your inner truth, something changes deeply in your energy. You begin to attract people and situations that are aligned with your essence. It's as if the universe responds to your decision to live in authenticity, eliminating everything that doesn't serve you and bringing what you truly need to grow. Jung called this synchronicity, that mysterious connection between your internal world and external events that seem to happen by chance, but are actually manifestations of your inner alignment. But to get there, you must first face your shadows. Jung extensively developed the concept of the shadow, those parts of ourselves that we have repressed, denied, or simply fear to recognize. We all have a shadow. These are aspects we prefer to keep hidden, our insecurities, our most basic instincts, our unacceptable desires, our unresolved traumas. And although it can be uncomfortable to face them, it's precisely in that confrontation where the deactivation of your fears truly begins. Why? Because our greatest fear is not failure or rejection. It's the fear of ourselves, of those parts we have denied. When you integrate your shadows, when you stop fighting against them and learn to accept them, you discover an inner power you never imagined you had. It's as if suddenly you had access to all your vital energy instead of spending it suppressing aspects of yourself. This integration process doesn't happen overnight. Jung spent decades studying it because he understood its complexity. It requires courage, patience, and an unwavering willingness to know yourself. It requires you to be willing to feel discomfort, to face difficult truths about yourself and your life. But what you gain in return is invaluable: clarity, purpose, and an inner peace that no one can take away from you. You gain the ability to say no when something doesn't resonate with you, without fear of what others might think. And above all, you gain the freedom to be who you truly are, without apologies, without explanations, without the constant need to justify your existence. This freedom is the true antidote to fear. Perhaps you're wondering how to start this journey toward authenticity. The answer is simpler than it seems, although no less challenging. Begin by listening to yourself. Jung developed techniques such as active imagination, dream analysis, and contemplative meditation precisely to strengthen this connection with your inner self. Whenever you feel discomfort, doubt, or even an intense emotion, stop and ask yourself, what is my unconscious trying to tell me? What part of me needs to be heard? Jung affirmed that all the answers you seek outside are already within you. You only need the courage to listen to them and act accordingly. One of the hardest things we do in life is listen to our intuition, especially when it leads us in a direction that challenges what we've built. Maybe it's a relationship you know no longer works, a job that consumes you without purpose, or even a dream you've pursued only because it seemed right to others. Jung reminds us that ignoring these signals is not an act of strength, but a denial of our true essence. And every time you ignore your intuition, every time you silence that inner voice, you are strengthening your fears. Why? Because fear feeds on disconnection. When you're not in touch with your center, with your truth, with that inner compass that always knows where to go, you become vulnerable to external fears. You become dependent on the approval of others, on external circumstances, on everything you cannot control. And there, in that dependence is where fear finds its home. It's choosing yourself means having the courage to let go of what no longer resonates with you. This isn't always easy. Jung observed in his patients how we often cling to the familiar because change scares us. We convince ourselves that the devil we know is better than risking the unknown. But Jung challenges us to see change as a door to our evolution, not as an ending. Think about it. What are you holding on to in your life that no longer serves you? What relationships, beliefs, or habits have you maintained out of fear of letting them go? Maybe you feel that letting go of certain people or situations would be a loss, but the real loss, and Jung was emphatic about this, occurs when you sacrifice your inner peace, your authenticity, to maintain something that no longer makes sense in your life. That sacrifice is the true cost of allowing fear to govern your decisions. When you finally choose yourself, when you decide to honor your truth above others' expectations, something transformative happens. You begin to see clearly what was previously clouded by fear and doubt. The people who truly support you stay, while those who drained your energy naturally move away. This is not coincidence or magic. It's the direct reflection of an internal change. Jung described it as that alignment between your internal and external reality that occurs when you decide to live in coherence with your truth. But this process also requires you to be brutally honest with yourself. Jung developed the concept of the persona, that social mask we all wear to function in the world. The problem arises when we identify so much with our mask that we forget who we are behind it. Sometimes, choosing yourself means admitting that you've made decisions that don't reflect who you really are. that you've allowed certain people to cross your boundaries, or that you've said yes to things you knew deep down you should reject. This is not a reason to judge yourself. Jung was a firm defender of self-compassion as part of the growth process. It's an opportunity to learn, to recalibrate, and to choose again, this time from a place of greater awareness. Jung firmly believed that authenticity is not a state you achieve once and for all. It's a continuous journey, a process of learning and growth that lasts a lifetime. And on that path, you will face resistance, both internal and external. There will be moments when you doubt yourself, when you feel tempted to return to old patterns just because they are comfortable, when fear will try to regain its control over you. It's in those moments when you must remember that true growth, the true deactivation of your fears, happens outside your comfort zone. Jung spent his life studying how human beings avoid growth out of fear of change, how we prefer known suffering to the uncertainty of the new. But he also discovered that it's precisely in that uncertainty where we find our freedom. The world will not always understand your decision to choose yourself. Jung himself faced incomprehension and criticism when he decided to follow his own path, separating from his mentor Freud to develop his own analytical psychology. There will be those who criticize you, who question your choices, and even those who distance themselves because you no longer fit their expectations. This can be painful, but it's also liberating. Because when you choose yourself, when you decide to live from your authenticity, you stop seeking external validation. You understand, as Jung did, that your value doesn't depend on what others think of you, but on your own relationship with yourself. And in this understanding, there is immense power, a power that deactivates even the most ingrained fears. The fear of rejection, the fear of not being enough, the fear of being alone. It's important to clarify that this doesn't mean you should live isolated or disconnected from others. In fact, Jung emphasized the importance of community and meaningful relationships for psychological and spiritual development. But the difference lies in the quality of those connections. When you choose yourself, your relationships transform. You no longer seek in others what only you can give yourself. You no longer try to fill your voids with people, things, or external experiences. Instead, you seek relationships based on mutual respect, shared authenticity, and joint growth. And in the process, you discover that the right people will always be by your side, not because they need you to complete themselves, but because they value the authentic version of you. When you begin to live from your authenticity, the world around you changes. This is not a metaphor or a perception trick. It's the concrete manifestation of what Jung called projection. Our psyche projects externally everything we carry within. If you live in conflict with yourself, you'll attract conflicts. If you reject yourself, you'll attract rejection. If you're afraid, you'll attract situations that confirm your fears. But if you choose yourself, if you accept yourself as you are, if you find peace within, that same peace will begin to manifest in your environment. This transformation doesn't happen immediately, and Jung never promised quick solutions or magical formulas. It's a process, and like any deep process, it requires patience and commitment. There will be days when you'll feel like you're going backward, moments when your old fears will try to return, situations that will test your new way of being in the world. But here is where the true test lies, the true spiritual challenge that Jung proposes to us. In your ability to remain firm in your decision to choose yourself, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's lonely, even when everything around you seems to be pushing you toward your old patterns. Choosing yourself will not always be understood by those around you. Jung understood this well. We live in a world that values personal sacrifice, giving everything for others, even at the cost of our well-being. A world that often confuses self-love with selfishness, authenticity with rebellion, inner search with passivity. But Jung taught us a profound truth that revolutionized modern psychology. We cannot give what we do not have. If you sacrifice your happiness, your energy, or your inner peace to please others, what you're offering is not authentic, and sooner or later, that imbalance will manifest as fear, anxiety, depression, or physical illness. True generosity, true service to others, can only come from an integrated being, from someone who has made peace with themselves. Now think about your current relationships. Jung dedicated much of his work to studying how our relationships reflect our inner state. How many of your relationships make you feel inspired, motivated, and at peace, and how many leave you exhausted, confused, or even empty? This is no coincidence. The people we choose to have close reflect the beliefs and values we carry within, as well as our unresolved fears. If you allow someone to cross your boundaries again and again, if you surround yourself with people who constantly make you doubt yourself, it's not because these people are bad or because you're destined for these types of relationships. It's because there's a part of you that still hasn't learned to protect itself, a part that still operates from fear instead of from self-love. Jung understood that protecting your energy is not a selfish act, but an act of deep self-love. He observed how the unconscious is always working to guide us toward our well-being, but we often ignore its signals. That feeling of exhaustion you feel after interacting with certain people is not coincidence or weakness. It's your unconscious telling you that relationship is not aligned with your essence. And if you choose to ignore that signal, the cost will always be your inner peace and eventually your physical and mental health. Choosing yourself implies establishing clear boundaries. And here Jung offers us another revolutionary perspective. Boundaries are not walls to keep people out, but bridges that allow for more authentic and healthy relationships. When you say no to what doesn't serve you, you're saying yes to your truth, your dreams, and your well-being. This doesn't mean you should cut ties with everyone, but that you need to be honest with yourself about which relationships nourish you and which drain you. As you begin to live from this authenticity, your intuition, that direct connection with your unconscious that Jung valued so much, becomes stronger. That inner voice that previously seemed weak or confused begins to guide you with more clarity. You start making decisions that not only make logical sense, but also feel right deep within your being. This is one of the most transformative powers of choosing yourself. It reconnects you with your intuition, with that inner compass that has always been there, waiting for you to trust it. And when you trust your intuition, fears lose their power because you're no longer navigating in darkness, depending on external opinions or past patterns. You have an inner light that guides you. Intuition, as Jung explained, is one of the purest forms of connection with the collective unconscious. It's that feeling you have when something simply feels right or doesn't feel right, even when you can't explain it rationally. But to hear it, you need to silence the external noise. This means stopping the constant search for approval from others, disconnecting from social expectations, and learning to trust yourself. Because at the end of the day, no one else can know what's best for you. No one else can walk your path or live your life. When you decide to choose yourself, you're sending a clear message to the universe. I am ready to live from my truth, from my authenticity, from my personal power. And the universe responds. You begin to attract people, opportunities, and experiences that are aligned with who you truly are. Jung observed this phenomenon in his patients throughout decades of clinical practice. This doesn't mean everything will be perfect, or that you won't face challenges. Life, as Jung well knew, always brings challenges. But those challenges will no longer feel like a constant struggle against yourself. Instead, they will be opportunities to grow, to strengthen your connection with yourself, and to put into practice your new way of being in the world. By deciding to live from your authenticity, you also begin to experience what Jung described as synchronicity. Those seemingly casual events that fit perfectly into your life and seem to have a deep personal meaning. They are not mere coincidences, but manifestations of your internal alignment, signs that you are on the right path. When you choose yourself and decide to honor your truth, the universe seems to conspire in your favor. The right opportunities arrive, the right people appear, and everything begins to flow in a way that previously seemed unattainable. But this is not magic or superficial positive thinking. It's the direct result of your internal change, of your decision to live in coherence with your essence. However, Jung also warned that this path is not free from obstacles. In fact, often, the greatest challenges arise just when you decide to choose yourself. It's as if the world, accustomed to the compliant version of you, tried to test your commitment to this new path, or more precisely, as if your own fears, feeling threatened, tried to regain their control over you. This is where your power lies. Because every time you reaffirm your decision, every time you choose your inner peace over external demands, every time you honor your intuition despite fear, you are strengthening that connection with your true self. You are creating new neural pathways, new energetic patterns, a new way of being in the world that will eventually become as natural as breathing. The key is to stay firm, even when doubts appear. It's normal to feel fear when leaving behind the known, even if you know it no longer serves you. Jung observed this pattern again and again in his patients. But he also discovered that every time you choose to stay in a place that doesn't make you happy, in a relationship that doesn't nourish you, in a job that doesn't inspire you, you're closing the door to something that could transform you. Jung taught us that change doesn't occur without resistance, but that resistance is not a sign that you're wrong, but that you're advancing. Fears intensify when you're about to take an evolutionary leap, when you're about to break a limiting pattern, when you're about to discover a new dimension of yourself. It's in those moments when you most need to remember your decision to choose yourself. One of the most powerful ways to overcome that resistance is to reflect on what you truly value. Jung dedicated much of his work to exploring deep human values, those that go beyond social conventions and connect with our spiritual essence. What is most important to you? What kind of life do you want to build? What legacy do you want to leave? When you have clarity in your values and goals, it becomes easier to make decisions that are aligned with them. And in doing so, you begin to attract people in situations that share that same energy. Because, as Jung discovered, like attracts like. Your internal clarity is reflected in your external world. It's important to remember that you're not alone on this journey. Although choosing yourself may seem like a solitary act at first, and Jung himself experienced periods of deep solitude in his spiritual quest, in reality, you're building a path that will attract the right people, those who support you, who celebrate you, and who are willing to walk with you. Jung deeply valued community and authentic relationships as part of the individuation process. These people don't need you to change to fit into their lives. They accept you as you are because they have also chosen to live from their truth. And in these relationships, there is no room for fear, only for mutual growth. When you reach this point in your journey, something within you changes forever. Life no longer feels like a constant struggle between what you want and what you believe you should do. Decisions that previously seemed impossible are now made with clarity and confidence. And most importantly, you find a sense of peace that doesn't depend on external factors, on the approval of others, or on specific circumstances. This inner peace, which Jung considered the true goal of the individuation process, is the result of honoring your needs, respecting your boundaries, and living in coherence with your values. But it's also a gift you can share with the world. When you live from your authenticity, you inspire others to do the same. Your courage becomes a beacon for those who are seeking their own path, and in this process, you not only transform your life, but you also impact those around you in a profound and significant way. Think for a moment about what your life would be like if you could let go of all your fears, all those shoulds that keep you trapped, all those relationships that drain your energy, all those commitments that don't resonate with you. Imagine the freedom, the lightness, and the clarity you could experience. Jung spent his life helping people glimpse that possibility, to understand that it's not an unattainable dream, but a reality that's within reach of anyone who has the courage to choose themselves. When you make this decision, you begin to realize that you're not losing anything by letting go of what doesn't resonate with you. Instead, you're gaining space for what truly matters. You're creating a life that not only makes sense, but also fills you with purpose and joy. This is the gift that Jung wanted us all to discover, That true transformation, the true deactivation of our fears, begins when we stop looking outside for what has always been within. When you choose to live from your authenticity, something extraordinary happens. You begin to feel truly alive. You're no longer trapped in the expectations of others or in the demands of a society that constantly tells you who you should be. Instead, you begin to listen to that inner voice that has always been there, whispering to you that there is something more, something better waiting for you if you have the courage to pursue it. That feeling of freedom, of finally being at home within yourself, is priceless. It's as if a heavy burden lifted from your shoulders, allowing you to breathe deeply for the first time in a long time. Jung observed this transformation in his patients, that moment when the face lights up, the posture changes, and it's as if the person finally allowed themselves to occupy their place in the world without apologies or justifications. However, achieving this freedom requires courage. It requires you to face not only external expectations, but also your own fears, doubts, and limiting beliefs. Jung reminded us that the greatest enemy is not outside us, but within. It's that inner voice that says, "What if I'm not enough? What if I fail? What if I end up alone?" That voice that, fed by past experiences of rejection or failure, tries to keep you in a safe place, even if that place is slowly suffocating you. But here's the secret that Jung discovered after decades of working with the human unconscious. That voice is not your truth. It's just an echo of past experiences, of the conditioning you've accumulated throughout your life. Every time you choose to confront it, every time you choose to act despite fear, you're dismantling those limiting beliefs and creating space for something new. This is the true power of choosing yourself. You free yourself from the invisible chains that have kept you bound. As you advance on this path, you begin to notice something curious that Jung observed in his own life and in that of his patients. The things that previously seemed important, those that consumed your time and energy, begin to lose their appeal. You no longer feel the need to compete, to prove your worth, or to please others. Instead, you discover a deep satisfaction in simply being yourself, in honoring your own rhythms and needs, in following your own path regardless of what others say. And it's in this state of authenticity where you find your true power. A power that, as Jung taught us, is not about controlling others or imposing your will. It's a power that comes from the connection with your inner being, with that part of you that has always known who you are and what you need. It's a silent but unstoppable power. Because when you're aligned with yourself, when you've integrated your shadows and made peace with your fears, nothing and no one can divert you from your path. The beauty of this process is that it not only transforms your life, but also that of those around you. Jung understood that we are interconnected beings, that our individual growth has a collective impact. When you choose yourself, you become a living example of what it means to be authentic. You inspire others to question their own beliefs, to challenge their fears, and to choose their truth. You don't need to preach or convince. Simply by being yourself, you're making a difference. This is something that Jung understood deeply. He knew that individual change has a ripple effect, that every time a person chooses themselves, they're contributing to a collective change. Because when we live from our authenticity, our relationships, communities, and even the entire world transform. But make no mistake, this journey is not linear. There will be days when you'll feel strong and confident, and others when you'll doubt everything. Those moments of doubt are part of the process, and Jung saw them as opportunities to deepen your connection with yourself. Each challenge, each setback, is an invitation to reflect, to learn, and to grow. The important thing is to remember that you're not alone. Although the journey toward authenticity may seem solitary at first, you'll always find people and resources that support you along the way. Maybe it's a book, a conversation, or even this video that has reached you at the exact moment you needed it. Jung firmly believed in synchronicity, those meaningful coincidences that are not accidents but signs that you're on the right path. When you look back at everything you've overcome, you realize that each step, each decision has brought you to this moment. And although the future may seem uncertain, there's something that will always be true. As long as you continue to choose yourself, as long as you continue to honor your inner truth, you'll be building a life free from paralyzing fears, a life that's truly worth living. The greatest gift you can give yourself is to be yourself, not the version of you that others expect, nor the one you've created to fit in, but your purest essence, the one that exists when no one is watching. Carl Jung showed us that the true work of our life is not in seeking outside, but in unraveling the mystery we carry within. And when you finally choose yourself, when you integrate your shadows and accept all parts of you, you realize that what you feared facing becomes your greatest strength. This is my call to action for you today. Life is too short to live trapped in fear, in the approval of others, to ignore your own needs and dreams. Today is the day to take the first step, to face your shadows, listen to your intuition, and reconnect with your true self. Because when you choose yourself, you're activating that spiritual principle Jung discovered, authenticity as the ultimate antidote to fear. What now? This is the moment to reflect on what you've heard. Ask yourself, what aspects of my life are in alignment with myself? What fears am I allowing to direct my decisions? What can I let go of today to live with greater authenticity? Remember that every small step counts, and you're not alone on this journey. This channel is here to remind you of your unlimited potential and to accompany you on your path toward a life free from fears. If this message resonated with you, make its impact go further. Share this video with someone who needs it, someone who is also struggling with their fears or seeking the courage to choose themselves. Every time you share this content, you're creating an expansive wave of transformation. Imagine the change we could generate together, a community of individuals committed to living from their authenticity, collectively deactivating the fears that have kept us small. Leave me your opinion in the comments. What part of Jung's teachings touched your heart most deeply? What fear are you ready to face? How do you plan to choose yourself from today? Every word you share is not only valuable to me, but to everyone who is seeking inspiration on their own path. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. Each week, I bring new reflections based on the wisdom of great thinkers like Jung, practical tools for your personal and spiritual growth, and reminders of truths that your soul already knows but sometimes forgets in the noise of everyday life. Thank you for being here, for dedicating this time to your growth, for having the courage to look within. Remember, fear loses its power when you choose to live from your truth. And as Jung taught us, that is the most powerful spiritual principle that exists, the conscious decision to be who you truly are, without apologies and without fear. I'll see you in the next video. And in the meantime, remember that the authentic life, the life free from paralyzing fears, begins at the exact moment you decide to choose yourself. That moment can be right now.